we're gonna, look at the work plan. I think I'll plan on putting that on either maybe the November or the December agenda for us to schedule a meeting for the work plan for 2021.
That works.
And who's the leader for the homeowner practical preservation, I guess, OHOW?
Yeah, I was gonna say, we don't have an OHOW person down.
Oh, I guess that's me.
I think it's you. I didn't want to say it, but I think it's you.
Oh, okay.
Does it have to be Lene? Can it be?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
Mm-mm.
And at least until she's done with her degree.
Right. I was just gonna say, if you're in your last semester of grad school, the leader is Pam.
Yeah.
That's who the leader is.
If she's okay with that, and then I'll happily make the switch with you when you're done.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, because it doesn't have to be a commissioner.
It doesn't.
It
doesn't have to be a commissioner. And much in the same way, I mean, I know that she kind of wants to take a break, but if Beth wants to continue heading up the cemetery project, Beth absolutely can. I think Beth, I recall Beth wanting to take a break though, but
Yeah.
Beth absolutely could continue leading that one up. But
Yep. Well, talk to people when you get a chance. Talk to people, and if you meet someone that's really excited about cemeteries, we may have. I can't say anything more, and I desperately want to, but I can't. We may have some really good news about funding for the cemetery.
yeah.
That's all I can say.
Stop it.
I like you looking at the ceiling to avoid making eye contact
That's
with
it
any
exactly.
of us, so that we don't.
That's it exactly. That's it exactly. So yeah.
Okay. So we'll revisit that then. Moving on to D. An open discussion on the Preservation Commission presenting a more complete view of Kalamazoo history. This is item B in the packet that Pam wrote something up, and Sharon and I last week I think, had a really long talk about contextualizing history, and I've actually been doing recently a lot of work with the National Park Service on recontextualizing our nation's history within the NPS's new kind of vision, a more perfect union. And this is a really great time to be talking about like what story actually gets to be told and who gets to tell that story. Because from the top down, like I said, I've been working with the NPS on like, what do our monuments actually mean?
What is the NPS, Josh?
The National Park Service.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So nope, that's a very good point. I throw acronyms around like candy, so thank you. But yeah, it's important. And well, go ahead. I mean, I'm gonna hand it over to Pam and Sharon, right? And y'all can talk. So
I just wanted to ask a question to get us started, and that is, Sharon, are you aware of any policy or conversations that the city administration is having right now with regard to how its advisory boards and commissions should move forward in terms of being more diverse and inclusive and combating or resisting or working our way out of the institutional racism that we all know has been out there in our lifetimes and for a long time before that?
I have been talking with our new diversity officer, who is my friend Dorla Bonner from my department, and we've been talking about a couple different ideas, nothing really firm yet, except that I acknowledge, and she agrees, that there's a lot of information missing in the standardized history of Kalamazoo that currently is being put together, and that there's very strong support for doing anything we can to just be sure that everybody's story is told. Okay, so that nobody's proceeded on it because with the COVID, everything is just kind of on hold. We were supposed to have all sorts of trainings from Erase and everything starting in April, and I got my training on September, the beginning of September. So everything has been kind of shoved back and put on hold, but there's very strong support for moving forward with, you know, and I've also been approached by the Truth, is it? The ones with the Community Foundation?
I was just
About
going to
trying
say,
to identify, yeah, about trying to identify
TRHC.
more, yeah, TRHC, trying to
Yeah.
identify more sites. And one of the ideas that I was just batting around with Josh was that if we had our own Kalamazoo, you know, not Kalamazoo Register of Notable Historic Sites or whatever we'd want to call it, we could include the same sorts of standards that we use for National Register or state marker listings, but we could also broaden it to include cultural sites, traditional sites, places where things happened, but were not necessarily the sort of thing that was associated with a structure that still exists. And that would allow us to, and this is, you know, still very amorphous, whether it was done with, you know, geopositioning and you're on the site of where they used to have the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus every year, and or you're on the site of the original colored school, whatever it is. I think that there's a lot of history in Kalamazoo that has been, I think, to put it kindly, not mentioned.
Yeah.
I mean, in some cases actively suppressed, but I think just ignored and just left aside and not made any fuss about. And I think it's time for us to start making that fuss.
Right. Well, and there are a lot of places in town too that are historically important but don't meet the criteria for the National Registry.
Yeah.
Well,
It is always one of my big complaints with historic preservation. Just because it doesn't meet the criteria for the National Register, it doesn't mean that it's not important, right? And I mean, as some of you know, but maybe not all of you, the National Register is also not the end-all be-all. And we can kind of create our own register with our own guidelines to highlight these significantly important historical places and locations. I think it's a fantastic idea.
Yep. I mean, I'm thinking of the old Douglas Community Center, which with the most recent owner is just like, oh my God, what did you do? But that site and that building is still very important, even if its architectural integrity has been compromised. That's really an important building. The Allen Chapel AME Church. Allen Chapel AME is one of the oldest Black congregations in the city, if not the oldest.
Yeah.
But they bought a church from a Dutch Reformed congregation that was modified in the 1960s, and on the inside it's very modern. And the National Register coordinator at the SHPO said, oh, it's not eligible because it's been changed. It's like, but the story is still there of this congregation. So we'd be able to tell that story in its original site and then also in its current site, even though that doesn't meet the National Register of the Michigan Historical Marker criteria. So anyway, just ideas and yeah.
Fred, you had your step first, and then Pam.
Yeah, I've got an idea about the Kalamazoo boxing. I know they've done a movie through the Valley Museum. One of the first gentlemen I've met moving to Kalamazoo was a man named Theotis. And in the Stewart neighborhood, he was called Champ. And he came around to do yard work and stuff in the neighborhood. And I talked to him several times. I haven't seen him in a couple of years. But he said, and he had a really difficult time speaking, but he said he was on the card with Muhammad Ali when they fought at the Kalamazoo Event Center. He would have been an early boxing match. And I looked it up and I thought I found his name. I didn't have his last name. But then talking with some longtime residents in the neighborhood, they said there was a house on Kalamazoo Avenue that housed boxers. And I'm thinking it's the Mayor House. I'm not certain. It's now apartments, big red building. And Shirley Coleman was telling me, she and her late husband Duke would talk about boxers, a real famous, well, the Boxing Academy was really famous up until the 80s. And I'm going online to see what's been put out. The movie about the Kalamazoo Boxing Association, has that moved forward? That was supposed to be coming out in June, or did that get held up?
Well, Dasha Bridges passed.
Yeah.
She was the one leading the project. But her team has still decided to move forward. But since the museum has no opening date as of now. And they're pushing exhibits left and right that are traveling contracts. We don't know when it'll open or what it'll look like, but my boss, Tammy Barnes, the assistant director, is still working with people. There were plans for oral histories, but of course, those have been put on hold until we know how we can keep everybody safe. And I don't know if they'll happen via Zoom or what will go on, but those plans are still ongoing. I don't think it's not dead by any means, but it's definitely slowed down.
Regina, do you know whether Lionel Ford was part of that at all?
I don't. It was Tammy had like a big stack of people that were on the
Okay.
plans of. I can ask her.
Yeah, it's Lionel, just like you think, with 2 L's at the end. He was a city housing inspector, but he's also been very much into the whole boxing thing. I mean, he knows Kalamazoo boxing sideways and upside down.
Great. I will
So, and
ask
I'm
her.
thinking like the Velvelettes, where do you put a marker about the Velvelettes? Because they lived several places. There's just so much that we could add to our history and enrich it that, and I'm not sure how to go about it, except I don't know. I just have no idea, but I think that it's something that would be very definitely worth doing.
I'd really have an interest in digging into that and researching it some more.
Pam.
Getting a hold of that gentleman you mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Lionel?
Lionel.
Yeah, I'd have to find information. Yeah, I'd have to get dig it out of my files, but you can find him through Vanished Kalamazoo. I'm pretty sure he's on that.
Pam.
A couple of things. Did you all get a chance to look at the draft racial justice and equity statement that I sent this afternoon about the National Trust?
Mhm.
I think something like that is important for this advisory board or commission to think about adopting if it's appropriate as part of the structure of taking on this kind of an effort. I also think that we have a potential partner in Kalamazoo that is SHARE, the Society for History and Racial Equity, that Donna Odom has acted as executive director for since its founding.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's pretty important if the Preservation Commission agrees that this is important to its mission. And as a former commissioner and chair and National Trust advisor and statewide, all of that crap, I think it's really important that we ask them to lead us in helping to identify, rather than going off on tangents and saying, this is important, this is important, this is important. I think we should take our cues from the folks who are experts and who live here and who know about taking it forward. And finally, as the founder of the O'Connor Fund, what I would really like to see is a major effort toward identification and acknowledgement, recognition of some sort of a whole raft of these things.
Yeah.
A grant from the O'Connor Fund could help make it possible to identify and recognize them. And I'll stop there.
I like the idea of getting SHARE involved. I wonder whether Donna or someone might be willing to come and be part of a discussion at our next meeting.
I know.
That's what I was going to say. Can we get Donna to what has everybody had a chance to read what Pam sent out?
Yeah,
all of that stuff. I sent links out to 1,000 things, but
well, that's true.
Yeah, I think this is a great idea and a great effort. My only ask is that we the narrative of why things were the way they were need to be documented. And I think that needs to go hand in hand with the architectural, land-based issues, because me coming from, I'm not from here, and coming here, you know, who knew we weren't supposed to live in West Hills? I didn't know that. But, after learning, now I get like, oh, okay. So you kind of need that narrative. And when somebody, as Kalamazoo, that we're getting a lot of implants from other areas due to the jobs, that's what we're looking for. Had I known, it may have changed my mind, it may have not, I don't know. But the point of the matter is, you don't know, because you're kind of looking around like, where is everybody? So just, I think the narrative also need to be included.
Oh yeah.
With that. And I know the library has some literature on it because I've read it, which is how I got but if it's coming from our commission, I think it holds a lot of power, and people will look that up and understand.
I think that the narrative that you're talking about is not uniquely Kalamazoo's.
Nope.
It belongs in every community in the United States and a lot of other places.
Correct.
And coming to create that will not be a major challenge.
Okay.
No.
But and I realize that it's everywhere, but the point of the matter is, everywhere has a different area.
Mm-hmm.
In Chicago, it's going to be, the north side. Here, it's the south side. So, so we need to identify that and so that you understand why this was the way it was, why this building was here and it was frequented by these group of people. So that's my only thing. I think it's an awesome idea. I really do.
It's interesting that you say it's the south side, because those of us who have lived here for a long time would say it's the north side, because that's where the African Americans were basically forced to live.
Right.
Because it was one of the few places that wasn't redlined.
Right.
In fact, it was designated that way.
Right.
So it's interesting. It's just a matter of the definition of where, right?
Right.
But that's an interesting point. Yeah. So action?
You
I was
guys,
gonna say,
you're
I know Dr. Michelle Johnson. I know she's
Mhm.
on one of the TRHT projects. I've known her for a while and worked with her. I can reach out and talk to her, because some of the TRHT stuff deals specifically with narrative change, and including cultural institutions and monuments and parks, a little bit maybe further than we would. We're not going to maybe do stuff with every single park, or maybe we will. But I can talk with her about where they might be at in their process. I haven't heard from her in a little while, but I can reach out to her. And I know Tammy has been working with Donna on Story Center stuff for, it's a big project, but she may also know where Donna is at, and I can reach out to Donna too, if you all would want me to.
Yes, please.
That would be
Yeah,
cool.
And
because if we could have one of them or maybe both of them be part of this conversation while we're kind of getting the beginning of it going, I think that would be just immensely valuable.
And for next month, I would actually like us to write up language for a mission statement and vote on that for next meeting. Have a direct statement that we can look at and amend and or vote on by next meeting.
May I ask a question, Josh?
Go ahead.
How do people feel about this model that the National Trust has published?
I like it, and that's
Mhm.
actually what I was going to use as a model, but I like it a lot, but that's just me.
And kind of focus it down to Kalamazoo and Southwest Michigan.
Yep.
So,
Well, I'm glad I got it today then.
Me too.
Yeah.
I could just think, I mean, I just been thinking about so many different sites that we could, illuminate for people that just have been
I've
just
always
not brought up
wanted
before.
one by Dr. Alexander's office.
His office that's important for a lot of different reasons, and the architecture is still pretty much intact. There's the house on 400 block of Dutton, right next to the driveway that comes out of the back of Deacon Mahaman, that was lived in by a Japanese American family that had been interned from the Northern California,
Resettlement.
agricultural areas, and they lived there for a couple of years because they went to the internment camp, and then they were sponsored by the Grace Christian Reformed Church and Peter Pan Bakery to come to Kalamazoo, so they didn't have to live in the camps anymore. And there's quite a detailed, long story about that because one of the members of the family wrote a book about their entire experience, and it includes a couple chapters on Kalamazoo. So, I mean, we've got so many, we've got Native American sites, we've got Latinx.
And yeah, I mean, so yeah, there's tons. So.
Good.
And I think what we need to do is kind of get an idea of where we'd like to go. So I like the idea of a mission statement, even if we just, we're start by modifying what the National Trust put together and then figure out how we want to fulfill that mission statement. What actions do we want to take? But I think this is going to be really fun. I was telling someone the other day that I feel like as a historian, I'm very well read in an awful lot of history, but I feel like now there's a whole new section that I can explore and integrate into what the history I already know. And it's really kind of both sad and intoxicating to have that opportunity.
Yeah.
It makes me really excited.
No, this is super exciting and it's super important too. So, and like literally my job. So.
It would be interesting to hear, Josh, a little bit more, if it's appropriate at this time, about your work with the Park Service.
Not right now.
Not because
Not
it's later, because you can't talk about it.
Because I can't talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, darn.
I know. I know.
Well, I would like to help out with research because Pam is teaching me how to look things up and I'm having fun.
Uh-oh.
We had
historical research.
Yeah.
We had a really good introductory session at the library a couple of weeks ago on Saturday. And the very first thing that I asked Lene was, when was your house built? And she said, what, 1936?
36.
36. And I said, how do you know that? And she said, from the city's records. And I said, the city's records are not always right.
Hey,
Mine's wrong.
The first thing we found was it 1930 or 31?
1930. Because it came up in the books on 31.
Yeah.
All right.
That was pretty fun. Yeah.
Well, they say that the city records say that my house was built in 1917, but there's people living in it in 1912. So I'm, I'm not so sure about that. But keep in mind that the city did not require building permits till 1923.
Exactly.
So sometimes it's just, we think someone built a house there and we're not taxing it yet.
Well, and we weren't even sure we were going to find Lene's house because it was annexed. And I didn't remember when, and I wasn't sure if it would be included in the city directories. Luckily it was.
Yeah.
So,
Right on.
that's good.
City directories are your best friends.
They can be.
And
I
I'm
love 'em.
learning.
Good.
Well, I just had a query from, I don't remember what, it's a developer or a project that's ongoing, and they want to know more about the area down near Ampersee on the east side of the Kalamazoo River. And so I gave her about a paragraph and a half on the bottoms, which was the industrial bars, booze, clubs, prostitution part of the city. Okay. And it was pretty much what happens in the bottoms, except murder, stays in the bottoms.
Except murder?
Except murder. Yeah. If there was a death involved, the police would get involved. Otherwise, it was just like hands off.
Wow.
And it's quite, I'd love to do a more detailed history of that area because it's just lots of African Americans live there.
How can
And
you do history if it's not written? You said
Oh, it's there.
It's there.
oh, it's there. You just got to find the pieces.
Yeah, it's there.
okay.
hmm
That
One
was
of my dreams, if I could ever get access to the Kalamazoo Gazette online instead of having to go to the archive to do it, which now is apparently only in 2-hour chunks. I would like to just into the search engine. I would just like to type the word colored and search between 1865 and 1930 and just see what we came up with. I bet there'd be hundreds of stories.
Do you want my genealogy bank password?
No, I want the Gazette. Can I get
Oh
the
yeah,
Gazette?
the Gazette's on genealogy bank from I can't remember how early it is, but it only goes till 1920. But Lynn and WMU Archive got the extended package for newspapers.com. So they do have 1921 and up of the Gazette.
Okay, I'll be in contact later.
Okay.
when I'm not too, and probably it'll be October because I've got to get these trips and the estate out of the way first. But
fine.
yes, I would love that. I probably wouldn't get any sleep at all for a month.
No, it's awesome.
So for now, let's see if we can get some guests to come speak with us at the next meeting about this. I'm happy to write up a draft of a mission statement for this. And then we'll pick this back up next meeting, I think. I'm excited that I'm really happy to hear that everybody's on board with this. This is really important.
is the draft mission or goal or whatever we want to call it, is that something that we should ask Dorla to look at and give us input on?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Because
Yep.
it is a city
For
advisory
sure.
board. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think
So
that-
I will write an email to Dorla introducing you, Josh, and what the HPC wants to work on, and I'll copy you on it. And then when you get whatever it is done, I'm trying to compensate for the fact I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You could just send it over to her whenever you get it.
No, I think that's a good idea.
that's great. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to item 9, approval of meeting notes, approval of our minutes. And I
Please
would,
approve the minutes because that means we're finally going to get a transfer to the.
well, meeting notes, yeah, they're not minutes. They're very detailed notes.
Thank you, Regina.
Yes.
You're welcome. I try.
Yeah, I don't think I saw anything this
Mm-mm.
time around.
Yeah, this is important because as soon as we get these notes approved, I can send it over to Marcy and she can transfer that big bucket of money over to the community foundation.
Yeah.
But she had to have the approved minutes. So
Did anybody see anything? Any corrections?
I guess I noticed something that had my name attached to it, so that brought my attention to it really quick. It's 8B, number 3.
Yeah.
And there's something should be added to that. I asked about the Fountain of the Pioneers and then the 4 corners of the reservation. That sounds like it means 4 corners of the Fountain of the Pioneers in that statement.
Okay. So under 8.
8B part 3.
Part 3, I guess just 4 corners and where the 4 corners of the reservation was. What's the name of that reservation? It starts with an N.
It's the Matchy Benashi Wish.
Nashi Witch.
With an M as in.
M.
M, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else? Okay, motion to approve as amended.
Oh, wait,
And-
sorry.
Tim,
I think old new business should be 9 then, not 8.
yeah,
That's small typo.
oh, the numbering is off. Yeah, there are 2 8s.
And then did I get the next?
Yep. So action and discussion should be 8. New should be 9. And then so on and so forth down.
I can
There's
correct
also,
that.
there's 2 11s also.
Yeah.
Anything else? Okay, now motion to approve as amended.
A motion.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Coordinators report. Sharon,
Who seconded that? Sorry.
Fred did.
I did.
Okay. Coordinators report. I gotta remind myself what I said. Hold on just a sec. It's just everything is so crazy. Numbers are down for the that's not correct. 46, 33. Numbers are down for the Historic District Commission, not a big surprise there. Also, it's up for Section 106 review. Section 106 for the new commissioners is when federal money is involved in a project, and it could be anything from community homeworks, putting in a new furnace for someone, or rebuilding their front steps, to Habitat for Humanity building houses. So the work that they propose to do has to be reviewed, because it's out of community development block grant money, has to be reviewed and approved, that there's going to be no impact on historic resources. So this we do every month. I get it all the time. And this is not up to date. I did not change those dates. But anyway, we're down in the number of reviews that have an impact on potential historic resources. We're up on the very quick reviews I do for stuff that's not going to have an impact on a potential historic resource. I just log that. And there's lots of, and those are the little projects like rebuilding the front steps, adding a grip rail, fixing the electricity in the basement of a senior citizen's house, all that kind of stuff. It all comes out of federal funds, so it all has to have at least a quick review. We do have a very large lead grant right now where we're going to be doing remediation of lead hazard properties in our community development block grant, our core neighborhoods. And that should have been going a lot faster than it is, but we're just getting up to, I think, our 4th or 5th house. And then I just approved some demolitions because we're using CDBG money for some demolitions. One is sadly a fire damaged house on Terrace Court. And I know that Kurt would probably be sad because he just fell in love with Terrace Court, but this has got pretty severe fire damage. And so there really isn't a lot of choice about it. And so we also review demolitions when we're using federal money for that. So there's all sorts of different things that are happening, for that. The Catalyst built the Hilton Garden Inn, formerly known as the Masonic Temple, is going along quite nicely and might actually be available for us, for MHPN to consider to hold the conference in if they do come back here in 2022. So,
I have a comment about that project.
what's that, Pam?
I said I have a comment about that project. I was
Okay.
horrified to see that skyway coming right out of the top of the primary entry of that building.
We knew they were going to do it, though. We've
I
knew
was so horrified.
I know.
And
Yep.
it's an egregious mistake on their part.
Agreed.
And it is not a good tactic for the city to allow. And I have spoken out. I'll tell you about it later during citizen comments. I'll tell you more later during citizen comments. I just think I think it's horrid. And I'm on the record.
Yeah, well, in support of what you're saying, Pam, most of our department agreed with you completely. But we had no legal recourse
Mhm.
to leverage. Well, we did everything we could. I did have a discussion with because the person who's been hired to be the promotion person for that hotel combination, the Stay Two Suites and the Hilton Garden Inn, was talking about it as the historic Rose Street Market building. And so I emailed directly to the people at Plaza Corp and I said, actually, if you're going to call it historic, it's listed on the National Register as the Masonic Temple. So if you're going to use historic, you should use Masonic Temple. And if you can say, or as the Rose Street Market building, that's fine. But if you're going to use the word historic, and they agreed with me completely. So hopefully the people up there in Plaza Corp are getting the fact that, you don't just let someone run with the word historic. We're going to keep our leash on you.
Yeah, I will have a hard time supporting the use of that property for anything by the Preservation Commission. I'm just saying.
Well, okay, that's all I have. Does anybody have any questions for me? Progress on what would used to be the Opera House, the Gilmore building down there, across from Old Peninsula Brew Pub, they are almost ready for their certificates of occupancy for 20 plus small apartments in that building. Okay. So it's kind of a nice, it's not really, it is an old building. It dates from the late 1860s, but it has been redone so much that the only snippets we found were literally wallpaper on the ceiling. And that's either gone or covered again. So I don't think they took it down again. I think they may have just covered it and left it there. But so we're getting some progress. We're having a pretty good looking downtown. So, and apparently if you have a special cup, you can carry your drinks around from place to place on the mall now.
Yep.
I have a question about trees and the forestry department in town. Have they had that budget cut because of the COVID pandemic? The forestry department, have they really had to cut back? Or I'm not.
They have gone through. They're on their second forester this year.
Oh, two,
so
and
that's
there's
part
been
of it.
Three in 2 years.
Yep. We lost Todd to that motorcycle accident. It took him a while to hire someone new. That person didn't fit in. He thought the best place to mark trees that needed to come down was a little tiny orange X on the sidewalk side, not a big one on the side where drivers would be more likely to see it. That was one difference of opinion. And they have actually been cutting some trees that have needed to come down for a long time. But I don't know whether I know that they are not, that right now there's not a lot of planting going on just because they're short staffed because of COVID and because not everybody's back to full time. Even though you're working outdoors, it's just the supervisory staff has to be there as well. So everything is everything is running in slow motion this year.
I figured that was the case. Now I've talked to the two latest foresters when we've come by and looked at our tree, and the first one put an orange dot on the tree. And he said, we're going to see how much next year, how many branches come up and how many are alive. The second one, the new one, put an X on it, which means it was condemned, I believe, if I'm understanding it. And it finally, they came and cut it down, but it's a legacy tree that was built, was a big size tree when our house was built. You can see it in a photograph standing out in front of our house. And now it's a 60-foot stump. And I'm thinking they need some pretty heavy duty equipment to put that down or get that moved or cut down. So I just wonder if there's a different philosophy and besides a dot and an X. Didn't seem like the new regime, they could have left the branches that were alive and at least there'd be a little bit of that tree hanging on, but it was a danger. It had to, the dead limbs had to come down.
You're gonna bring us back into the agenda.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fred, you know about as much as I do right now.
Okay.
Same thing happened with the tree in front of my dad's house.
And we got somebody, our neighbor, had wanting trees planted, and trees are hard to put into historic preservation. They got a different.
Yeah, we don't have the legal right to rule on trees. Living things we don't have any right to.
Okay.
It's all got to be persuasion.
All right.
Citizen comments. Pam.
Josh, thank you.
You're welcome.
For the last couple of months, I've been involved both as a former preservation professional, but also as a downtown resident in the planning process for downtown. And the planner and I have run into a couple of problematic items in the process, although she probably wouldn't say we've run into problems. We are attempting to move to a form-based code for downtown Kalamazoo. And my position is that we went into the exercise of determining some specific recommendations like height. I'll use that as an example, without the resources that we should have had. And when I asked about whether or not a survey had been done about that kind of thing, height, age, what a block looks like, that kind of thing, she said, no, those are for pattern books. And I said, well, I've done a pretty deep dive into form-based code over the last year, and all of the case studies that I have seen so far have done some sort of a survey about what is there now. I asked her before the last exercise started if the working group participants were going to get a map that included the historic properties, districts, and individual properties in downtown. And she said, at first she said, no, she didn't think that was going to happen. And then Sharon and I went back and forth with her a little bit about whether or not it should or should not be. It still has not been shared with the working group or the public, to the best of my knowledge. I have some serious concerns, which I have expressed to her about that. I actually went out and did a count of heights in the downtown core area, which is approximately runs from right now, as envisioned, Burdick Street or the mall, east on Michigan Avenue to about the railroad tracks, and north and south on the mall and Burdick Street. And right now the height limit is unlimited. However, in a form-based code, it's my understanding that you're supposed to use existing form to help guide you in making decisions about what your future form should be.
Yes.
And so I did counts on heights, the numbers of floors, because I couldn't actually calculate heights.
Right.
And as it turns out of all of that downtown core area, I think there were 6 or 7 buildings out of 100, perhaps, that exceeded 6 stories in height. The vast majority were between 3 to 5 stories.
Mm-hmm.
And so I pushed back a little bit on that in my comments and said, no, I don't think we should have unlimited heights in our downtown core, because it's now occupied by buildings that are clearly of one particular ilk. And that's right up until the middle 20th century, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the outcome is going to be, but I have some concerns, which I have echoed to her and did in my comments, but I hope you all will follow that effort and support me in this.
Yeah, Pam, who is this individual who was saying that?
Christina.
It was Christina.
Yeah.
Okay.
When I asked her if any sort of a survey had been done, there was not one. And when I suggested to her that my understanding of form-based code was that we were going to use what we had to build on, and I think that's what our plan says we're supposed to be doing, preserving and protecting, and from a sustainability perspective, we're supposed to be trying to keep what we have. And I'm disappointed that the map's not out there, so no one knows where our historic buildings are. I also have, by the way, recommended that while I understand it's important to get rid of downtown design review because it's for all the good it's done us in the interim, it's a clunky process. I think Sharon would agree that that's the case. But I have recommended that all of the historic properties downtown that are not locally designated still get a Secretary of Interior Standards review for project approval. That is a very small percentage of the overall buildings downtown. We'll see where that goes. But I'm not happy with the process so far. And Christina knows it. And I wanted to share that with all of you because the Preservation Commission is a city advisory board. I'd also like to say, I'm going to quick change up and talk about trees just a minute. Fred, when we planted new trees in front of the Marlboro 2 years ago, we had to pay for them ourselves. And it was a long negotiation process with the forester about getting it done. So that's what you have to look forward to.
Yeah,
That's
well,
if you want it done on your schedule. If you are willing to work with the department, they will let you choose your own tree, but you have to wait for them to do it, and you won't be able to specify the caliber. They may plant a much younger tree than you might like to have.
so there is still a chance to get a tree planted.
Well, maybe not this year, but definitely next year. Well, they're going to have to get that stump out of there anyway, really.
Sorry to bring
We don't want to do it in 2020. If they planted a new tree in October and dropped that stump, it would hit the new tree. I guarantee it.
Sorry to bring up trees.
Any other citizen comment?
We have no other citizen comments.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Commissioner comments? No, y'all are good? So if anybody is bored during COVID times, it is not really a shameless plug. It is preservation related, but my newest publication is out and I just found out that PBS made it streaming, which is kind of cool. So any smart device, the PBS app, whatever, you can stream my new stuff. It's called Digadohi, D-I-G, Digadohi. It means land in Cherokee, but D-I-G-A-D-O-H-I. But it's on the Snelson Brinker House in Steelville, Missouri. So I was pretty stoked that it's not just on PBS, but it's like streaming. So yeah.
Well,
But
congratulations.
you're famous too. Look at you.
I got IMDb pages and but yeah, my newest publication's out. I'm pretty stoked about it.
Well,
Digadohi.
D-I-G, G as in good, A-D-O-H as in Henry, I as in igloo. Digadohi.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And congratulations.
Thank you much. Thank you much. Anybody else have anything? Move to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
I second.
Adjourned. Meeting adjourns.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
See ya.
see you next month.
Everybody take care
Bye.
and hopefully see you next month. Yeah. So, all right. Be well, y'all.
Very well. Sharon, do you have a second?